Okay, welcome everybody. In this video we'll show you how to add dimensions to your production drawing. Now we assume you've already added the views to your 2D production drawing, and in this video we're going to show you all the tools you need, how to add your own dimensions, how to import dimensions, and how to add center lines and how to add center marks. So we go to the annotations tool here. This is the toolbar we'll be using today, and we're going to use the smart dimensions here, which we're already familiar with because it's exactly the same tool as in the sketch environment. The model items tool, center marks, and center line. Okay, we're going to start with the center line tool. This adds a center line, which you can see here. So let's remove this again and let's add another one. We click on center line, we select two lines, symmetrical, opposite from each other, and SolidWorks automatically creates a center line in between. Now we want the line to extend through the entire part, so we can just drag the line to extend through the entire part. Now we can also draw center lines, simply going to the sketch tool, clicking on center line, and we can simply draw a center line. And we can also make it horizontal, vertical. We have exactly the same tools available as in a normal sketch. So you can also draw parts in the production environment, no problem. Now, next thing we're going to add are the center marks here, which are also under annotations. So we usually add center marks to these holes. These holes are usually being drilled, so we're going to click on the outer edge of the hole to add center marks. And these specify that when we draw, we usually put the end of our drill bit right in the center of this hole and then draw or drill straight through. So that's why we add center marks here. So we usually start by adding center lines and center marks where they are necessary. Once we're done with that, we're going to add dimensions. So we're going to go to the Smart Dimension tool, which you'll see right here in the top left corner. And the tool is exactly the same as in the sketch environment. So we can zoom in, click on the line, and we can add a dimension. And we can place a dimension on the top here, in the middle, and at the bottom, anywhere we would like. If we were to select another line, we would get the width here. And since it's a circle, we get the diameter sign right here. Now, this dimension is only visual, so it's not linked to your sketch. It is possible to link a dimension to your sketch. We'll show that later on. But this dimension only shows you the width. You're not able to change this dimension and therefore change the geometry of your actual part. This dimension, if I click on it, also has a little bit more options. So if I go to the left here, I get a text box which I can just type into, as you can see. We can also add symbols here, which are quite common, which you can see here. So we can add a degree sign, we can add another diameter sign, we can add a square sign, and we can also remove them as well. This dim part here, which you see on your left, that's the actual dimension. If I were to delete that, then I would delete the dimension which is indicated from geometry, in this case 50. And I can also add here the diameter sign and change it for a plus minus sign, for instance. I can also change the precision here, but in this case my dimension which is displayed here is 50 and 0.000, so not really any reason to change the precision. And normally 0.1 is standard. But if you have parts which require higher precision and the actual dimension is, for instance, 50.01, then you are able to select a higher precision here to display that actual number. For now we'll leave it at 0.1. Now if I go to leaders here, I can change the style of the arrows. I can add break lines, which will show you a little bit later. So those are a couple of options. If I want to add a fillet dimension, I simply zoom in, click Smart Dimensions, click on a fillet, and position the fillet dimension. If I go to the top here, if I want to add a dimension to this circle here, I can click on it and I immediately get this dimension. I should say this dimension type is not preferred, it's usually unclear. But if I move it to the left or move it to the bottom, it automatically snaps to the dimension we usually use. And once it has snapped, I can then reposition it and change it around. I can also add a dimension from one hole to the other. And then if I go to leaders, I can select here the R condition, meaning it should either have the dimension from the minimum to one circle to the minimum of the other, or the maximum outer dimension. So I can move this around as well. So those are a couple of options I have available. Now let's remove all the dimensions. And I'm now going to show you how to import dimensions. And we're going to do that using the model items box. So 9 out of 10 times you're actually adding all the dimensions manually. But this is not always the case. Once you've created a sketch, if you incorporate the production method in your sketch, so the dimensions you use in the actual sketch can also be used for production, you can use this model items option. So all the dimensions from the sketch can then be imported into the 2D drawing. So we can simply open this option, select the view, click on OK, click on yes, and the dimensions which are possible to add in this view get added. They're not all useful, because if I zoom in, you can see this dimension is 50, clearly needs to be added in the stop view here. So we can click on that and delete that. There's also the dimension here, 34, which pretty much goes to nowhere, so we can delete that as well. That's probably also more useful in the top view. So it still requires some manual work, but it saves you a lot of time and usually prevents the user from missing a dimension. Now I should say, when you're using relations on some kind of pattern, not all the dimensions will be will you be able to import. So this isn't some flawless method. It still requires you to double, triple check all the dimensions to see if they're all there, to make sure they're positioned properly, and to make sure they're actually useful for production. Because not all dimensions you use in your sketch are actually useful in the actual production environment. So keep that in mind. Now we can again move all the dimensions around. As you can see, they will auto snap to some angles. And as an example, let's pick this radius 2 and let's add some break lines, which I showed you before. The options on the leaders here, and we can activate break lines. Okay, as you can see, I get a small break here from the line when it crosses through another line, making the dimension a little bit more clear. I would always advise you to reposition the dimensions to make sure they are not in the drawing or in the actual parts. For instance, this dimension radius 5 is better to be displayed here, so it's not inside the part. I can also move, for instance, this dimension around like so. But then again, it is inside the part now, so it's not preferred. So if you can move it to the side, to the top, to the bottom, that's usually better. Also make sure they don't cross any pieces of text. So we'll move it around like so. So the section name is uninterrupted now. Now, if I were to double click on this dimension, you can see I go to D1, dimension 1 from sketch 2. So this is the actual sketch dimension. So I'm now able to change this dimension to another value. And that would then change my part and my actual geometry. Now I'm not going to do this now, but it is actually possible to change the part in the 2D production environment. But this is only possible when you use model items. If I use smart dimensions, and let's just add a dimension here, like so. If I double click on this, nothing happens. Because this is a display dimension, it's not actually linked. Okay, so let's say we want to change the style of the dimensions. So let's move it around a little bit more to make sure it's clear. And if we go to options here, top options, we can go to the second tab, document properties, and we can go to dimensions here. And here we can change all the styles of the dimension. We could change the size, style of the arrow. And if you go to the left here, we can also change the units, which is standard millimeters grams second. If we click on OK, you can see if we click on update that all the styles of all the arrows have been changed. Now, if we go to options again, let's move it back to the original. And click on OK again, and it changes back. Okay, so now you know how to add dimensions manually, you know how to add model items, you know how to add center lines and center marks. I'm only going to show you how to add text using a note, and that should be it. You should be able to add your own dimensions. Now in some cases it's handy to add a note in your drawing, so we can just get a little text box. If we click on note, we can place it somewhere, and then we can simply type. And this is quite useful because, as you know, a 2D production drawing is actually a communication tool. It shows the production department how to create the part you actually designed. So if you need to add a little message, you can do that using a little text box as shown here. So now you have all the tools to add dimensions, to add center lines, center marks, etc. to your drawing. In the next video, we'll show you how to add hatches, how to you work with configurations, activate exploded views, and other more complex options like surface finishes and geometric tolerances. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.